Michael Silva from the city of Vacaville that he is here today to tell us a little bit about the city of Vacaville and his story in becoming an elected official. So,
Yeah,
yeah, tell us, when did you first became interested in politics, and what do you think why is it so important to be involved?
yeah, great question. So thanks for giving me the time and always enjoy chatting. My dad immigrated here from Mexico. He worked at a cannery here in Vacaville. That's what brought him here. This area has always been the source of the American dream for us. Before he worked in the cannery, he did whatever jobs he had to do. He was actually a pretty avid swimmer back in Mexico. He came from the state of Michoacan. And he always would tell me these different stories, one of which was that he had the fastest swimming time and, he would have beat the Olympic gold medalist. I'm like, yeah, right, Dad. Yeah, right. And then he actually showed me, I was digging, he passed away years ago. When I was going through the house and going through some belongings, sure enough, I found an award that was first place in all of Mexico in the whatever he swam. And so but I think about a lot of it in the sense that, hearing a lot of conversations that both he and my mom had about, how people in positions of power have the ability to help, but we're always questioning whether they actually do. People in positions of power actually understanding what people were going through so they can help them. I saw my parents both working very hard. I saw people they work with work very hard and struggle sometimes. And so kind of looking at it, from a big perspective, one of the things that my dad and both my mom really instilled in me is that, you can't sit around and wait and expect other people to do things for you. And if we want things to change, we gotta work to change it. And so, and even the other aspect of that is even with that strong work ethic that both my parents had, that I wish I could be at the level that they were, that even through all of that, you still need an education. So kind of where I've been focused on is really trying to honor their legacy and their American dream, to make sure that the sacrifices that they made, um, for me, for my sister, weren't in vain. To make sure that I pursue the opportunities that are here as much as possible, in the way that I can, not just to help myself and help my family, but also find ways to pay it forward to our community. Because in the end, that's what our kids are going to inherit, and that's what we leave behind. So um, I I moved back to my neighborhood, Markham. So Markham neighborhood has the most amount of deed restricted, subsidized, low income type housing, in a city that's about 26% registered Hispanic. The local Title One school, which is a low income school, the local neighborhood school in itself is 70 to 75% Hispanic. So just looking at that disparity in a city that quote unquote only has 26% Latinos, then the school within this neighborhood has almost three-fourths, almost 75%. And so a lot of that always made me question why, how is it the case? Why is that situation? And then you see, how your neighborhood looks completely different than others, and your school look completely different than others. And literally just going one block over, you see a difference in the type of housing, the yards and the cars. And rather than, again, blaming and getting angry, which I used to, learn about, I just always had a strong drive to figure out and understand, what can we do to be successful, and and when people are doing everything that they're supposed to be successful, how to remove the barriers that still exist that prevent them from being successful. So I didn't really ever plan on being in politics. It's just that, getting back into the really starting some after school programs and helping out with science type of hands-on activities from robotics to biotech. That just got, start meeting folks, and they said, hey, you should run for school board. I'm like, what's that? And so eventually pursued that, had most votes ever, for a school board member at the time. And probably that'll be the case since we went to different areas for that. So that's by default. but I'll take that. I'll take that little trophy. And then 2 years later, when our city went to districts for city council, neighborhood members got together, and through a lot of decisions, I had no plans. I really didn't want to get on city council. I finally found my footing on school board. It takes a couple years um, to really understand the process and how to make it work. But essentially, we decided that since we're going to districts, we wanted to make sure that certain stories, certain experiences were represented. And I'll just leave it on this note because obviously, if I'm elected and a teacher, that's a recipe for disaster and talking too much. But they said people would tell me it's how important it is to have a seat at the table, and and it took me a couple years, even as an elected official, to understand the power and what that really meant to have a seat at the table. Because I just saw, well, if I'm just one out of seven, then do I still have a voice? I'm still a quote unquote minority. But in reality, you have a platform, you have the ability to understand things that a lot of us don't understand and haven't been exposed to, haven't been taught, haven't been grown up around, and understanding that and the ability to form relationships with other decision makers, that is absolutely essential. So I truly now understand having a position at the table and the power behind that, and I'm happy to share some of the struggles and also gains that has resulted in these past few years.
Okay. So you mentioned barriers in education. So can you tell me at least the two barriers that you feel that are you are improving while whether it was being at the school board level or at the city council level, and how is it that you were able to accomplish that?
Well, I think like number one, nothing can be done alone, and there was a lot of phenomenal people, and not just Latino, not just people from lower income backgrounds that really understood and were working towards some great things up until about March of 2020, and then once COVID hit, it just shifted the focus on how do we not figuratively and literally, how do we survive? And so we just saw the whole community just really divide over a lot of different issues on how to respond to COVID and when and how do we reopen the schools. And that was it's a time that when we finally went back to school, but still in mass, like when we see pictures now as educators of that, it's still pretty sad. Like it's something nobody ever wants to go back to. But in the context though, like there was a lot of great programs that were going to focus on our English learner students, on how to get them to where they need to be. How do we start implementing different STEM type programs? So I forgot to mention that I'm a full-time professor at Solano Community College. I teach biotechnology. We have a bachelor's degree in biomanufacturing, so that's a huge thing to be able to get a bachelor's degree in a field that pays a livable wage over the medium income for the area, that allows folks to get out of poverty. And so the barriers in a sense where how do we create these pathways that start from an early age, again in our elementary schools, to say, hey, here's some opportunities, here's some skill sets that you can continue to build upon throughout your K through 12 education, and maybe even start taking college classes while you're in high school, get those credentials to where now your work ethic, your drive, your ability to get along with other folks, absolutely aligns with the mission and goals of these companies that are willing to pay you the medium or above medium income type wages that will allow you to again take care of yourself, your families, and pay it forward. So since then, and then one of the challenges that a lot of folks had moved around. So new positions, different life changes. So a lot of those key individuals, that infrastructure, the people who drive the work, right? You have people that talk and you have people actually doing the work. A lot of those had shifted and moved around. So I think just now, finally, it's 3 years later, 4 years later now, that finally we're starting to get some of that back. But there's a lot more challenges with cost, right? So inflation's huge. The cost of any type of infrastructure or community type of, projects and whatnot, all of that's gone up, 30% from these last figures were presented. But that still, Vacaville's been in a really good spot, and really, put the money where their mouth is, and so to speak, respectively. I guess that's okay to say. To reinvesting back in our community. So from things that are small as making sure we have ADA access with our sidewalks. So we had homeowners were getting ridden up for having messed up sidewalks, and they're, according to them, they were being told that if they don't fix it, the city's going to come in, they're going to get charged 3 times as much, and that's going to get put on to their and if they don't pay that, they're going to get put a lien on their house. And so I just, I didn't, with everything that was going on, I didn't think that was right. So I'm very grateful for the city staff to find a funding mechanism that went in, and as long as people signed up, as long as they followed through, which is a lot of times a huge battle, in that self, they got their sidewalks repaired and they met code, and so that means people in wheelchairs now have access. Kids, running along, they don't trip and fall. And one of the last ones along Brown Street, there was a section of sidewalk, a section that was never, there's never a sidewalk there. Jeanette Wiley's on council, and actually John Vasquez, they help advocate for this funding, to come to basically come in and actually put a sidewalk there. And however, in that bid, we forgot one section of sidewalk that was separate from this area that people need to access in order to get to school. Well, I was in DC, and I remember coming right when I came back, we had a public meeting about this, and I was advocating to get this section fixed, and I was being told, hey, it's going to be another year. Well, again, I'm grateful that some of the city staff heard that conversation. They found some money, and when I came back that Monday, they were pouring the cement to make that project 100% complete. And what I saw was a child about 10 years old who I did not know lived there. A child in a wheelchair. For the first time in his life, he was able to access school in his wheelchair from his side of the street. And I got teary eyed, and so all the drama, all the things like behind it, even just led about simple things, the sidewalks, it made it worth it.
That's
Bigger things, I mean, and that's the thing, like, it's a lot of times it's just those small things that make a big difference in people's lives. And but then there's big things that, like, over $3 million that's going to go into one neighborhood park. We got 7 million from the state to do another park on the Brown Street area that's often always looked down upon. We have a huge funding gap for that, so that's coming on the city agenda. But the whole concept there is that this low income neighborhood that has everything from homelessness to homeless shelters to low income rentals to older homes that may be more affordable. um, Throughout that whole process, one key thing is missing is like entrepreneurship, and community building opportunities. So by putting this money into this infrastructure that allows folks who are working hard and may not have many means, they now have a place to go to celebrate the culture, celebrate their community, celebrate each other, and just celebrate life. That Brown Street Park is going to have a performance stage, so we can do different cultural events. Trying to work in the deal for a screen so we could do movie nights at the park or watch World Cup games or boxing matches, anything I can do to get particularly Latino families out. And it's not just to have parties. That's one misconception that came out about this in the beginning. It's not just a place to have parties. There'll also be a commercial kitchen with some indoor seating and outdoor seating, along with a lot of other play amenities, including a small field for soccer. That right there allows for small startup companies to get started. So if somebody wants to start a small business or a side business, they can do it legally out of that facility, and they'll have the venue and people there to be able to tap into that market and hopefully build up that clientele. I can't tell you enough times, and I don't want to tell you publicly where they're at. But there are people here in the neighborhood running restaurants out of their backyard, out of their garages, and once they get going good, because they're good quality food made with love, they get shut down because they're not meeting code and whatnot. So hopefully this is the way around it.
okay. So, one last question. What is the message do you want to send to the young Latino and Latina women uh, in Solano County and in your city in Vacaville that it's really important for them to hear?
You know what? I think everybody's in a different part of their life. But I'll share maybe a little bit of my story in the sense that um, I saw how hard my parents worked, and as a teenager, my dad passed away when I was 12, unfortunately. Then my mom was there; she lost her job and had breast cancer. So there was a lot going on when I was a teenager. But and then I don't want to say I lost my way. I just checked out of everything, and but I had enough sense. I had enough literally of like their voices telling me, "Don't do that, mijo. Hey, hey." So it kind of, for whatever reason, it kept me out of enough trouble to where I didn't get into the system. But I think that I took the sacrifices that they made for granted. So I think it's important that we all need to realize that, life is hard. Absolutely, other people have it much easier, but life is hard. And the last thing we need to do is make it harder for ourselves and harder for others. So, for me, it wasn't until I was 21 when I said, "Hey, I need to change. Something needs to change." And obviously, me trying to change the system the way I'm doing it isn't working out that well. So I just said, I just started asking these questions. Why can't I be this? So this at the time was a medical doctor. Why can't I go to college? Why can't I have a better job? Why do I have to only do these low skilled jobs or be somebody that they look down upon? Like I'm better than that. My goal initially was to prove myself to them, but it's changed over the years. It's not to prove myself to people who look down upon me or anybody else who looks different than them. My goal is really to look at how I can contribute towards giving back and to the community that helped create the person who I am, being there for others who are trying to improve their lives through, again, being an educator or being in policy, so in politics, in politics per se, and making sure that I truly honor the sacrifices of my ancestors, because not that nobody out there is perfect, right? Everybody makes mistakes. They're going to, especially when so many things are stacked up against them. But the key thing is that we have to continue to believe in ourselves. We have to believe in each other. We got to help each other up rather than keep trying to find ways where we tear each other down. And I think the when we don't know what we want, some of the best things to do is just get involved, have
Mhm.
conversations, reach out to people that are all different ages. When I got into city council, there was people trying to recall me my second meeting. I'm like, I just showed up, you know, the issues with policing, and there's just a lot of, COVID, there's all these
Mhm.
things going on. And all I wanted to do was just get a chance to understand where people were coming from. And so when I got on there, over that first year, I just really took time to just go wherever I was invited to, just to get a chance for me to learn from them. And if they wanted to have a conversation, and through that, they learn from me. And I think for me, I've formed a lot of good relationships. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. I still have all the answers, but if we're really looking to improve our lives and lives of others, um, there's opportunities are out there, but it takes us working together.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not 100% what we're interested in. Sometimes we got to do something like that wants to, others help, something that somebody else is interested in. But I love doing community type service things. I love bringing my kids out there. We've done, murals of walls that are constantly graffitied, places that have a lot of weeds. We went there, took out the weeds, and put in pollinators plants that the monarchs can have a place to rest and feed along their migratory journey. Obviously, that has for a lot of us, a lot of cultural connection to that as well, and we're looking to keep expanding that. So. Um, the other thing is, mental health's been a big issue across the board for everybody. I think, kind of along those lines is if the more we just kind of get out there and understand that we are different and others are different and be okay with that. But the more we just get engaged and just do work on different projects, or
Mhm.
help out our environment, help out others like that, it keeps the spirit going. And that positive spirit's infectious, and a good infectious, to where we really help ourselves and help others. And that's what drives me.
Okay, well, muchas gracias, Michael, and I can't wait to hear more of the great things you're doing.
All right, thank you.
Okay. No